What I want to discuss with you today is the field of economic cost-benefit analysis. Financial appraisals of projects have been carried out by the private sector for decades, but the introduction of economic analysis, where variables are measured in terms of their economic value rather than their financial value, is something that's relatively new. Perhaps the field started some 50 years ago. For example, if you're driving down the road, you may not be paying anything for the road services, even though the road services may cost millions of dollars to produce. However, the economy is getting a very important service. You're able to transport safely at low cost, and hopefully in a very short period of time, as compared to the time and cost it would take to travel that distance if you didn't have a good quality road. So the economic analysis looks at that and tries to measure what is the real value to people for that particular service. It is applied today around the world, and it has particularly allowed governments to make better decisions in terms of their investment expenditures, to find those expenditures that in fact are going to have a larger net positive impact on the lives of their citizens. And so that the projects that are selected will not necessarily be the most expensive ones, but the benefits as compared to the expense incurred will be maximized. So that, in terms of criteria, they have a number of criteria. One is just that. What is the value of the economic benefits as compared to the value of the economic cost, often expressed as a ratio or as a difference. We'd say the net present value of the economic benefits minus the present value of the economic cost. So the applications are very vast. Let us just look at something here in Cyprus. A recent study done by one of my colleagues, Dr. Arif Yurtsev, looked at the benefits and the costs of providing clean, potable water to every household in Cyprus, now that we have fairly pure water coming from Turkey. His analysis showed that the benefits to the household would be approximately 6 times the additional costs which the public sector would initially have to incur in order to provide this infrastructure. Expressed in a different way, every household in North Cyprus would be better off by about 460 euros every year if that project were implemented. And so we have that application to an infrastructure project. It's also applied to health projects in the sense that if we spend our resources on certain types of treatment, what do we gain in terms of people's productive lives? And for example, in a recent study that I've been working on, we have been looking at in Uganda the treatment of children who are severely malnourished, and we consider a program which gives them this rather miracle food that has been invented called ready-to-use therapeutic food, which the children love, and basically you can cure a malnutrition child in about 8 weeks. And we find that measured in terms of the amount of productive years that the children who are cured of this problem, we find that it only costs about $40 a year in terms of each productive year saved, which is a very, very high return in terms of making an investment. Another case, we look at electricity projects. Another study which we just recently completed in Canada was looking at a wind farm. A lot of people think that renewable energy is the answer. Well, not always. In this Canadian case, we have a large wind farm being built, or has been built and running on Wolf Island in Lake Ontario. And we look at what are the economic benefits. Well, the economic benefits from renewable investments are the fuel, the fossil fuel saved. And in this particular case, not very much fossil fuel is saved because Ontario doesn't need the electricity when the wind is blowing, which is usually at night. So the result is that while this project costs $475 million to construct, the total benefits over its life of 30 years is expected to come to about $78 million. So the net present value is $397 million. It's almost a complete waste of money. And so that points out another big benefit of cost-benefit analysis is it helps to identify exactly the impact of particular policies. And if there's a problem, it identifies what the problem is and how you may adjust the policy so that you get a larger amount of economic benefits for the amount of cost you incur. And so we have applied this technique to many, many projects, whether it's electricity projects, road projects, agriculture projects, and also such projects as road projects which will improve both pedestrian and road safety. In North Cyprus, we find that people value safety. They value not taking the risk of getting killed, either as pedestrians or as occupants of motor vehicles. And so what we find is that when we're looking at what the economic benefits are, we find that people, in fact, are willing to pay collectively something close to $1 million to reduce the deaths on our roads in North Cyprus by one individual, or about 20 million euros for every pedestrian accident that is that is saved. In other words, not necessarily a death, but just an accident. So this is once we have these values, then economic cost benefit swings into action. We say, well, if we introduce interventions that are going to improve road safety and reduce the incidence of death and injury, then we now can put an economic value on it because we have people's expressed willingness to incur costs to reduce those accidents and therefore we should be selecting those road projects where they have a big impact at reducing accidents. And we should engage in these investments up to the point where the additional investment cost is justified by the reduction in accidents, the improvements of safety, both in the roads and on pedestrians. So other areas where cost-benefit analysis is used extensively is in the area also of health, in terms of is it more beneficial to perhaps have home care, to have people from the Department of Health come to people's homes and to assist them in living at home, or should we build public facilities to, for example, house the elderly or the people who are mentally ill? And again, cost-benefit analysis comes into play. What is the most cost-effective way of dealing with this particular problem? So that's a summary of the issues on cost-benefit analysis. It's become a very important tool for governments. In the Western world, at the present time, all new regulations must have a cost-benefit analysis undertaken before they are implemented. Are the benefits of these regulations worth the cost? For example, another example, a Canadian example, was that there was an analysis done as to reducing the sulfur content of gasoline. This would incur costs by the refiners who had to change the way in which they produce gasoline to get this more sulfur out. At the same time, the sulfur interacts with car engines to produce large amounts of particulates, which is the main cause of diseases such as asthma, influenza. The analysis was carried out and it found that there was approximately 3 billion of benefits and only 1 billion of costs. And so that, based on that analysis, the government of Canada went ahead and implemented the policy of reducing the sulfur content from 300 parts per liter down to 15 parts. And what's interesting enough is that the United States followed suit. So the United States also benefit from the Canadian analysis. So that's, I think, a summary of what I want to do today. And I hope somebody becomes interested in this interesting application of economics.